Either way, I've read 4 books in January, and 1 book I actually did not finish. I have never put down a book and gone, I don't want to continue this. Hey, it's been a really long time. There are a few things to update you on since I last posted, which was, I think about 10 or 11 months ago. I dyed my hair. I did that literally last night. Secondly, I have moved house. I finished 2nd year uni. I'm now in 3rd year. I'm still going to be posting videos similar to the ones which I originally started posting, but I am also entering into booktube territory. If you follow me anywhere else, you will see that I read a lot. Last year I read 50 books. I set myself a target to read 50 books and I somehow did it, which I don't know how, considering the year before that I read about 2. As I was reading loads, I got into like book talk, and I started posting videos on there. Some of my favourite YouTubers who I still kind of follow, because I don't really follow that many anymore. The majority of people I do still follow are all like booktubers. Today I'm going to be talking about the 4 books which I read in January. I've set myself a target of 55 this year, which I think was a mistake. Usually once I start a book, I'm like, right, this is it, I have to finish this, even if I don't enjoy it, because it could get better. Usually my perception of a book changes once I finished it and once I've sort of like been thinking about it for a little bit. This month, I really struggled to do that with this book. Half the reviews are really good, but the other half were just like, I hated this book, don't bother reading it. This book is Burnt Sugar. I bought it in a charity shop, so I'm not too fussed about the fact that I don't like it because it was about £1. I got maybe about 40 pages in, and it's only about 220 pages, so I was like, come on, like, you're already a quarter of the way through, just read it. But when I have a book which I don't enjoy, I put off reading it. If it's just gonna make me stop reading for ages and put me in a massive book slump, then I just don't, it's not worth it. I might come back to it maybe when I've got a bit of time later, but January's just been too busy for me to sort of be reading a book which I didn't care about. This is coming from somebody who hasn't read the full book, so if you have a different opinion on it, then please let me know if you think it is worth finishing, but just from what I got from the first sort of quarter, it wasn't something which I'm overly fussed about finishing. It is about an Indian woman whose mother starts having problems with her memory. I don't really know, that's kind of the basis of what I've got from it so far. She doesn't like her mother very much at all. She's not a very nice person from what I've picked up, and she has a husband, but yet again I don't really know much about him. I don't think she likes him either. I think it's a bit of one of those books where the author kind of puts themselves into the main character. So if it is, then I feel kind of bad because the main character is not that likable. I might come back to it, maybe not. The first book which I read was, I don't actually have with me because I finished it before I came back to uni, and there was no point bringing it back with me if I had already read it. But it was The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman, the second in the Thursday Murder Club. I am obsessed with the Thursday Murder Club. The first book I read maybe like July last year, and it just instantly became one of my favourite books. It's one of the books which the entire way through it I was thinking, this is going to be a 5-star read, I just know it is. It is about a group of old people in a retirement village, and they meet up every Thursday and they try to solve these unsolved murders. And then what happens is somebody in or around the village is murdered, and obviously these old people are like, well, we've got experience in solving murders, let's go and figure out this murder. And it's just these like 5 people like pooling down to these murder scenes and like scamming their way into the murder scenes. Richard Osman is just such an incredibly clever person. The way he writes is just so smart, and I don't know how or why, but it's so enjoyable while still having a bit of a twist to it. The second one I'm not going to go into too much detail about because there's not much you can say without sort of spoiling a little bit of what it is. But it's about one of the characters, Elizabeth. She is contacted by one of her old friends, and he comes back and he's like, somebody's trying to kill me, help. And they are basically trying to like solve this murder almost before it becomes a murder, and they're trying to figure out who's trying to kill this guy. You find more about each of the characters and their backgrounds and sort of why they're all like what they're like, and they're just all such a mismatch of different people, but they all fit together so perfectly. This is one of the books which I don't normally do this, but I wanted to underline a few things in this book because I just was obsessed with half the things they said. Whilst it's a little silly book about old people solving murders. There's just so much depth to it about the characters' backgrounds and about like just it's great, it's beautiful, it's clever, you don't guess the ending. What he also does is he makes you think that it's something else, and I thought it was really smart because I thought I picked up on something and it wasn't. I was not very smart. He did that intentionally because it's Richard Osman. He's a genius. That was my first book which I read this year and I gave it 5 stars. The second book I read, I don't normally underline things, but this book I really wanted to because I had been told that a lot of the way which it was written was just so beautiful, so I did want to, and this was The Invisible Life of Addie Larue. And I'm a little bit on the fence about this book. The premise is basically about a girl in the 1600s, I think it is, who makes a deal with an old god. She basically says, I want freedom, I don't want to be tied to anybody, and he goes, okay, I'll give you that. He basically makes it that every single person that she meets will never remember her. She can't speak her own name, she can't tell her own story. Every person she meets will just forget her. She is entirely and utterly alone. The author does such an amazing job of just letting you feel her loneliness, that when the plot starts to change you feel so overwhelmingly relieved alongside the main character Addie. And I do think the writing was beautiful. I underlined quite a few things. I underlined a lot of it. Books she found are a way to live 1,000 lives or to find strength in a very long one. She basically just can't leave a mark on the world whatsoever. It sort of takes you through her getting used to her life like this and her understanding sort of the limits of her curse. It's quite, I think that's maybe why I'm a bit on the fence about it, is because as I was reading it I felt quite like unsettled about it, because you really feel her loneliness. It's quite difficult to sort of go through that with her, and it's a beautiful book. I really recommend. I gave it 4.5 stars, I think. If you go through it, I've literally underlined like most things in this book. In a few moments you could kind of tell that she was trying to write beautifully, and it almost came across as a little bit pretentious, but not always. There were just a few times when I think she knew that she'd written so beautifully in other areas and she sort of tried to pass that off throughout the rest of the book, and it didn't fit as well. I still think I need a bit of time to stew on this book to sort of figure out fully where I feel about it. So I really recommend this book. The next book I read is the 6th Narnia book, which is The Silver Chair. I have been reading these really slowly over the last like 6 months maybe. I find these books perfect for sort of filler books in between times, so if I'm on the bus or if I'm on my break at work kind of thing, something which I don't need to fully focus on. It's still an enjoyable story. Some of the Narnia books I really enjoy and some of them I am really not bothered about. It's a bit confusing because the way which they were published is not the way which they recommend you read them nowadays. The first book which you're meant to read is not the first book that was published. It is one of the later ones, which is a little bit confusing because they sort of mention a few things throughout the rest of the books and they make references which you won't understand if you sort of either hadn't read the books already, seen the films, or understood the story before you read it. Voyage of the Dawn Treader. That is my favourite film. It is my favourite book. I really felt like a lot happened in that book. The writing I felt was a little bit more interesting because these were written in like, what, the 50s? Like, it's a little old school sometimes. But then this one, The Silver Chair, has Eustace in it, who is part of the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and he basically comes back to Narnia like a few months later in his time, but in Narnian time it's maybe like 60 years later. I don't know how it works. Aslan gives them a task to find a missing prince. Prince Caspian is in this book, but barely. He is a very old man at this point, which I was apparently very emotional when I was reading this book because I saw Prince Caspian as an old man and started crying. Don't know why. I'm really excited to get onto the last one because I know kind of the story of what happens, but this one I give 3 stars. It was a fun filler book. They're really quick to read. They take maybe like a day or two, but they sort of take me a lot longer because, like I said, I only read 10 pages at a time. And then my final book, which I finished, was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. She is the woman who wrote the Shadow and Bone trilogy and Six Crows duology. I was really intrigued to read one of her books that wasn't set within the Grishaverse, to see whether her writing was as enjoyable when it's not with the characters which we're familiar with. The Ninth House is about a girl who goes to Yale and is part of a secret society which looks over the other 8 secret societies. Basically secret societies at Yale, and they're all magic. Alex, who is the main character of the book, She can see ghosts, which nobody else can do. The secret societies have approached her and have gone, you'll be really useful for us. It means whenever they're doing rituals, whenever they're doing just things like this, she is able to see ghosts. So they basically start coaching her on the ways of the secret societies and of Lethe House. I don't know how to pronounce it. I just always, in my head, I've been saying Lethe. She is coached by a guy named Darlington, who I'm in love with. But basically what happens is she comes into Yale and a girl dies like a few months into her being at Yale, and everyone's like, oh, she just died, like RIP, I guess. And she's like, no, I think there's more to this. So she starts looking into it. The author basically flips back and forth quite a bit, and slowly as the book goes on you learn more and more about her past and how she's kind of come to where she is. But she's had a bit of a horrible past because she's the only person who can see ghosts. Nobody believes her. She goes a little bit crazy over it. She just gets involved in very bad things, and I'm not going to go too much into it because I don't want to spoil anything. She's entirely new to it. She didn't think anybody else knew or understood about these things, so it's really interesting seeing her sort of combine with people who are kind of classed as professionals within the area. The way it was written was slightly irritating. The fact that it kept flicking back and forth. There was one bit which was kind of meant to be like a resolution, a final answer to a question we'd been asking, and they kind of just say, this is the answer, and I didn't realise that that was the end of that. There will be more in the next book. That is what the entirety of the next book is about. The final line of this book is great, and it's made me really excited for the next book. It's not out yet, but it will be soon. I don't know when she's releasing it. I did enjoy it. I absolutely love secret societies. I love dark academia, magic, and all of this, so it was really exciting. It's sort of been lumped in a little bit with The Secret History, which is one of my favourite books. I'd say it didn't interest me as much as The Secret History, but it's a good story. It's interesting. I'm excited to read the next bit. I thought the writing style was interesting, not amazing. It's not a book which I'm gonna be raving about, but I enjoyed it and I'm excited to read the next one. Those were the books which I read this month. If you are new here, subscribe, because I'm going to be making a lot more like book related content and also a lot more just life and stuff. So if you like that kind of stuff, then follow me. Also follow me on TikTok, because I post a lot more on there. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe because you'll be able to see my videos every so often, and I will hopefully be seeing you next Friday. Okay, bye. Go and read your book. Go and read your book.